makes most women start a business? Is it passion, money, or freedom? Welcome to Female Founders, the podcast that takes you behind the scene with women who are founders and CEOs to help you start and scale a successful business of your own. I am your host, Legally Blissed. Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of Female Founders. In this episode, I have the pleasure of speaking with Suzi Hixon, also known as Suzi. Suzi is an IP lawyer and AI-driven legal tech consultant. She is also the founder of Legally Blissed and Advogens. Through her businesses, Suzi provides transformative experiences for legal professionals and entrepreneurs. Good morning, Suzi. Thank you for taking the time to have this conversation with me. You are a seasoned IP lawyer and an AI-driven legal tech consultant, which is very interesting. Can you tell us about your journey from a biology major to an IP lawyer and legal tech consultant?
Oh, yeah. I will give you the high points in just a couple of minutes. So I graduated from college. You're correct, with a BS, Bachelor of Science in Biology. And before I went to law school, I really never planned on going to law school. I wasn't really sure what I was going to do with my biology major. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to extend this college thing for 3 more years because law school is going to be just like college, right? Well, it was not just like college. Unfortunately, it was an area that was extremely unfamiliar to me, going from science to something that was not science. But I plowed through college or law school and ultimately ended up securing a job right out of law school as a patent prosecutor. And that's because I took and passed the patent bar while I was in law school. And that was another kind of like career move, quote unquote. That's something I've kind of felt into a little bit because when I was in law school, I really wanted to integrate my science background in some way with my ultimate legal career. And I ultimately decided I would go into patent work, which is, helping people protect their inventions. And my initial job out of law school was actually in an area that had nothing to do with biology. It was more mechanical related. So I was working on patents for medicine bottle openers, they have like the little ridges. That's actually kind of a complex art, and they protect that. Some companies actually protect child-proof caps in bottles. I was working on that. I was working on lighting fixtures. I was working on, are you ready for this? I was working on flavor amendments for cigarettes, which I feel super guilty about that now, like looking back on it. But I was like, at the time, it didn't seem so bizarre, which is strange, right? But, at that point, you could still get a smoking section in a restaurant. So I only did that for a couple of years, and I fairly quickly transitioned into trademark work, which is helping people protect their logos, right? Their source identifiers like words and designs. So that was a better match for me in terms of interest, although it didn't really meld my science background in any way. I loved getting to work with creatives in marketing departments. That was really cool. So I did that for about 8 years. And
wow.
In 2010, in 2010, I decided that I was going to start my own practice. So this was sort of innovative because people just didn't take their laptop and start a business, right? Like this was sort of when the whole founder startup community, VC-backed startups really started taking hold in San Francisco. And I was kind of annoyed with working in a big firm because I wanted to do things quickly, right? When I saw an opportunity to grow the business or the firm. I wanted it to happen quickly. And there was so many just layers of bureaucracy to get anything done in the law firm. And I was like, you know what? I could charge clients way less and make more money and not have to deal with the bureaucracy of a big firm if I just start my own practice. Well, people thought I was completely insane, but whatever. So it worked out, and I have had my own boutique law practice, primarily focusing on trademark enforcement and protection for my clients. And I've done that again since about 2010, and I've managed to grow my practice. And in the meantime, just learned a ton about business. I've really leaned into technology to help me grow my practice. I was fortunate to start working with Clio early on to do my law firm docketing. And, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, there was not the robustness of technology for small firms or small businesses just to be able to do the things that a lot of bigger businesses were able to do. And I just really embraced that, and was able to grow my kind of web-based law practice by working with clients from all over the world, because trademark work is federal based in the US, and it doesn't matter where we live. So I was location independent, and I could take clients from all over the world. And that's been sort of the beauty of being a trademark lawyer. And, I've always kind of joked that I have more clients in Ukraine than I have in my hometown, which is very bizarre to like an old school, lawyer. But in 2020, I started working on a community for female lawyers called Legally Blissed. I've been working on that because I really want to help lawyers with their mental health, because it's been a challenge over the years, a lot of ups and downs for me. And the newer thing that I'm working on now is helping what I would call, self-proclaimed technology challenge lawyers integrate legal tech and particularly AI, artificial intelligence, into their practices, because lawyers are they're slow to change. We're an industry based on legal precedent. So naturally, we're looking into history before we move forward. And so therefore, I think that lawyers have a little bit of a hang up about taking on legal tech, but they can do it. So that's what I've been working on recently.
So now when you said that you are helping them implement AI into the firm, so can you give us an example of what AI can do for them?
Yes. So excuse me, every law practice is different, right? And every legal practice area is different. So their workflow is going to be a little different. So what I do is I look at different steps of their workflow, and I help them figure out where does it make sense at this time based on the current state of the technology, as well as its privacy and data. Is this a platform that can really help my client stay aligned with privacy and data laws? Because that's another thing that's changing a lot, right? Because when you're utilizing this tech, you could be inputting client information. So that's obviously something that's been drilled into us as lawyers from a very, for day one of law school, is importance of client confidentiality. So that's something that we take a look at. But an example would be, particularly with respect to their initial client intake, we can use AI. We can use AI in onboarding as well as business development. And that's where I see a lot of lawyers starting to do it right now before they even get the client, because it's a little more clear. We're not inputting any client information when we're doing the initial client development. So this could be using AI for content creation and helping the attorney actually use their voice, not like voice sound, but their tone, right? AI can actually help them write content and outlines much faster, and it can be done in kind of their own tone. And again, I don't mean like their actual speaking voice, right? But their style. That should be a better way to put it. So there's a lot of places and kind of touch points within the practice where legal tech can be integrated. Contract review, predicting outcomes is another big one. And, all of this is fairly new. So I'm starting a YouTube channel in May called Tech Ease for Lawyers. And I'm going to be talking with industry founders about their tech. And because one of the important things that lawyers want to know, and I can find out for them, is are they compliant sort of with the client confidentiality requirements? So, and I think that's a big thing that we're really looking at right now.
And also AI right now it's a big thing right now, and especially starting 2022 to 2023, it's been blowing up right now. But my only concern is the privacy of the client. Are you gonna be doing something to protect the client privacy at the same time?
So my job is not to protect the client confidentiality, right? That is the role of the lawyer that's handling the matter. That being said, I do act as sort of a liaison between the lawyer and the tech company to help ensure that the lawyer is working with a company that is compliant, because it is really important.
I will say that too. So now, what inspired you to start your own boutique law firm and tech consultant business, Legally Blissed?
Oh, so we kind of talked about what inspired me to start my own practice, and that was I was really tired of the bureaucracy of a big firm, right? And all the red tape to get things moving forward. As for starting the community, when the pandemic happened in 2020, one thing I observed was a lot of women lawyers were the ones staying home taking care of the kids, right? They were the partner that was, they weren't still working, or maybe they were working from their kitchen table, but they were the ones that they were putting their careers on the back burner. I also realized that, over 50% of law school grads are women, but a very small percentage of these women ever end up becoming partners in law firms. So I'm like, where do we all go? The other issue that I see is that a huge number of female women lawyers are struggling with mental health issues in their practices, and they're considering leaving the practice of law altogether. And when I saw that, I was like, okay, we've got to really figure out what is going on with women in the legal field, right? Like, what is happening to us? Where are we going? Why are we no longer practicing law, right? And I don't think there are more questions than answers. And a lot of times when we find answers, it just leads to more questions. Is something that I've learned here, right? So, I think that there are a number of things that are happening. Women are not great at prioritizing themselves. They prioritize everyone. And one of the big things that I think is really important is for everyone, not just women lawyers, but for everyone is self-advocacy. Women lawyers are fantastic advocates for other people, but they're not great self-advocates. They advocate for everyone and then they do it for themselves last. That has massive impacts on our mental health. So that's something that we work on in my community, Legally Blissed, and it's setting boundaries, which is super important. And in the community, I have sort of a methodology called the Bliss Method. And the B means boundary setting, which is super important. L is leveraging technology and AI to make our practices better. I is integrating creativity, because I cannot underestimate the importance of, integrating an element of creativity, or in other words, adult play, right? We forget, or whatever our version of rejuvenation is. And that oftentimes is our creative endeavors. The first S in bliss means self-confidence. And the last S is seeking support, which is what Legally Blissed does. And it's a community of women lawyers. Not everyone is practicing. You may not be surprised to learn that about 50% of the community members are no longer practicing law, but they're still advocates in some way. And we're just a community who believe that to be the best advocates for other people, we have to be great self-advocates.
I agree with you in that. And I think that, like you said, as women, we seems to love putting everyone else before us. We put the animals, we put everything on earth come before us. And at the end of the day, we get exhausted, we're tired, we burn out. And usually I'm like, who's going to take care of you then now? Now that you burn out, you don't even know what to do. And I'm guilty of that. Don't get me wrong. So talking about it doesn't mean I'm not guilty of it. And I think that it's just the way we are as women. We just like that. We just do it without thinking. And
self-awareness is so important here.
Yes. And one thing my son started to do every single night before we go to sleep. And he will ask me, Mom, what is the best thing you did today? And we'll go throughout the entire day what we did that was so great. And he has a different names that he called it. And a milestone or something like that. He usually, we go through it and he was like, did great today. But one thing you missed, you didn't put time for yourself. I'm
wow.
Like,
what an insightful human. I mean, you're great. You're raising an incredible human. Wow.
Yes, but it was when he started doing that, it was very strange because, for such, he's a little kid and he started doing that for me. Was kind of like, you care about me. Thanks. I appreciate it.
That is an indication that he cares about you, right? Like he has an unconditional love for you, and, your well-being is super important to him. And of course, he might be like, man, Mom's been really busy and I hope that she can take care of me at the end of the day. Right. But,
But the funny thing is, we always have our time together. So we have before we go to bed, we have a certain amount, 3 hours blocked out. It's me and him. We do whatever he wants to do. And a lot of time it end up being something got to do with coding. But, I guess what I was trying to say is, some of us as women, we don't have that. We don't have someone to remind us, hey, did you take care of yourself today? So I think that a community like yours is important because you remind them like, hey, you have to take care of yourself. Take 1 hour for yourself. Take 30 minutes if there was. Go for a walk. And I think that we need that. We need that check-in. We need that someone that said, you are important too, just like everything else on earth. So I like what you're doing.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And that really is, the mission of the community is for the members to support each other and, kind of help each other check in. And part of this really is increasing our self-awareness as we go about our daily, lives, that we are checking in and saying, okay, how am I feeling? Am I okay? What have I done? What have I done for me today? Because having that self-rejuvenation in whatever way you want it to be, like, obviously there's not a one size fits all strategy, but it's still super important. It's what makes us human. And sitting in front of a computer all day doesn't, even though, a lot of us love to create, that's what we're doing, but it's still not, it's not our full humanity. It's multifaceted, right?
Exactly. And also that, can you elaborate on your approach to helping lawyers improve their self-advocacy, mental health, and overall work-life balance?
So what we're doing in the community with respect to that?
Yes.
I just want to make sure I understand. Yeah, okay. I just want to make sure I understand the question. Yeah. So the cool thing that we have several things in the community, which is called Legally Blissed, which a lot of people would say that's an absolute oxymoron because how can you be legally blessed? And, when I created the name of the community, I did start second guessing myself. I'm like, am I a fraud? Because, how can anyone be legally blessed? But it's kind of fun, right? Of course, it's a play on Legally Blonde. But, what we have in the community are, we have guest experts that come and talk about these subjects, because I think that's really important, is that we bring kind of outside energy into the community and outside expertise. The women in the community are encouraged to do their own presentations on and provide content based on what their experience or expertise is. So we have coaches in our community who work with their clients outside of the community on things like boundary setting. And what's really interesting is that the women in the community who are coaches, they were lawyers, right? So they get some of the unique issues that lawyers deal with, for example, with setting boundaries. They may come in and talk about that. I produce content in the community for members. So, for example, back in November, I did kind of a series for it's No November, and I talked about how to say no, because this kind of goes to this, it's a part of setting boundaries. Learning how to say no is, right. And learning how to set boundaries is a part of self-advocacy. But so I kind of drilled in even further and talked about how to say no with grace, because women have a really hard time saying no. Many of us are people pleasers.
We don't like to say no. Oh yeah, well, I can take care of that for you.
Yeah, I'll do that, right? So what happens a lot of times is we say yes to, I'm going to give an example, menial tasks in a law firm that other people could really do, things that end up taking up more of our time and really don't, display what our true talents are. So we're really hurting ourselves by saying yes to certain things. We have to be very, very discerning about what we actually say yes to. And, what I'm working on right now is, kind of with myself, is no being the default, right? And if it's not a hell yes, it's a no. Because in the past, my default was yes. Like, yeah, I'll do the presentation. I'll travel across the country to do the thing for you, right? Now it's like, no.
I love to help, but unfortunately, nah.
Yeah. And, that's the thing too. Like, we're very apologetic when we say no. We think that we have to come up with 100 different excuses for why we're saying no. But there's really, you don't have to have an excuse for why you say no, right? You don't have to. And think about it. I was thinking about someone that I worked with recently, and he sent me an email that was like, I can't do our meeting on Friday at 10 o'clock. I'll get back with you. And I didn't think another thing about it. I was like, okay, that's awesome. Cool. We'll talk, whenever. And we did. And I was just thinking about how, like, if that would have been me, I would have been like, I can't do the 10 o'clock because I have to do X, Y, Z. I would have felt like I had to have, like,
an excuse.
An excuse, but we don't. We don't have to do that, right? Like, think about this. If somebody come back and say, so why can't you do it? Right? Like,
I'm busy that day. Very simple.
Right? You're someone rescheduled a call with me recently, and she said, what was it? It was something along the lines of, I have 15 hours of meetings scheduled this week. I am tapped out. And I was like, I am so glad she said no to me and rescheduled our meeting. Right? Like, I don't want her.
Yes.
I want her, when she is fully present, can, be there and be fully involved with our conversation. And I was it garnered a lot of respect for me, because, I was like, oh, cool. She knows her boundaries. She knows what she can and cannot handle. And by those same lines, if you are setting those boundaries and you're saying no, you do garner more respect from people. I'm convinced.
Me too. I think so too.
Yeah, so I think that, there is a lot of fear in setting boundaries because we are afraid of how someone is going to react, or are they not going to like me? Because we're people pleasers. We want people to like us, right? We're groomed to get, for people to, we just want people to like us. And at the end of the day, people like us or they don't, right?
Not everyone is going to like you regardless.
No. And you've nailed it, right? Not everyone's going to like you. And that's okay.
It's okay. Yeah. You'll find your own community, your own people that's actually stand behind you, regardless of what happened in your life. But now, with your community, do I need to be a lawyer to join that community, or do I need to be in law school to join that community? So where do I need to be exactly so I can start going to law school?
Go to law school now. So the community is for lawyers, but they don't have to be practicing lawyers. They don't have to have been they don't have to have ever taken the bar past it. So they don't have to technically be attorneys, which is like we use lawyer and attorney interchangeably, but they're a little bit different. A lawyer is someone who goes to law school, but who hasn't necessarily taken the bar. And an attorney is someone who's taken a bar and they're registered to practice in a particular state. It's interesting because we don't have any law students in the community, but I really want law students in the community. Our community right now is very, I want to say, kind of top heavy in terms of experience and expertise. We have women who have been practicing for a long time and now they're coaches and they're consultants. But I would love to see the community expand into to some law students because I want to see. I think that there could be a lot of synergy there and a lot of just really organic mentoring going on, which I think is super important. We don't have a formal mentor program in the community, and I purposely don't want to have a formal mentor community or program in the community. And that's because I think that the best mentor-mentee relationships are really organic. And I think it's hard to force that. So if it arises and there is, I lean into the community a lot myself as the facilitator and the founder in terms of what members want. So if there's ever sort of this groundswell of, we really want some type of mentoring program, I'll make it happen. It just hasn't been something that people have really asked for at this point. So it is all lawyers, and it's called Legally Blissed, and of course I started this in mind for it to be for women lawyers, a safe space for women. Now, I waffled about that a little bit because I do understand and appreciate the importance of men and what they offer to our practice. And I've had a lot of great male allies who are some of the biggest cheerleaders of Legally Blissed, which is so cool. And so a huge shout out to the male allies out there who, really want to see women succeed. I think we need to give them some props and thank them. And, maybe at some point the community will open up more to men, or maybe there'll be more interest by men. I haven't had any, but if there was a man that was like, I really want to be in your community, I'm not going to say no. I'm like, okay, well, we might be talking about whether we should wear pantyhose to court, but come on in,
I hope you don't mind.
So, that's the current structure of the community, which, just launched. I just launched this community back in October of 2022. And then, I started the podcast in early 2022. I get the last few years confused, honestly, a little bit, just because of the nature of the last few years. And, I'd been working on the community and what it would look like way before I ever launched it. And even my podcast, I was working on that way before I officially launched it. So it feels like I've had it much longer than I have.
So what's the podcast is about?
So the podcast is called Legally Blissed Conversations, and I have conversations with women who are in the legal field or closely related, and I talk to them about their journey to where they are. And, We talk about what inspires us. We talk about what does success look like. We talk about the obstacles that they've encountered and overcome ultimately. I try to ask kind of some of the same questions to everyone, although it's a very organic and free-flowing conversation. I just launched season 3 this month,
Wow.
March of 2023. So I'm really excited about it. And I've changed it a little bit, and I'm doing YouTube lives on Wednesdays at 1 p.m. And that content will be pushed to the podcast. So the YouTube live, it's technically Legally Blissed Conversations, just live on YouTube now. And I've mixed it up a little bit to where it's not just conversations, but it's also either a roundtable with other women who are in the community, and we talk about important issues. Like last week, we talked about how we navigate failures. And today, I'm going to be solo talking about AI and mindset.
Ooh.
Because I think that we need to get our mindset right when it comes to a technology that's coming at us fast and furiously. And if we fight it, we're not going to be happy campers in a year. So we're going to talk a little bit about mindset.
I love that idea. So now, how do you see legal industry evolve in the next 5 to 10 years? What role do you see AI technology play in the evolution?
Wow. I pray that it evolves in such a way that it makes us better lawyers, and gives us more time to have in-person and in-court appearances rather than, sitting at our desk and doing more, I guess, mundane types of tasks. I hope that we can outsource more of that to AI. That's the goal, right? I look at AI as a complement to what we do and not competition. And I think it's really important that we get our mindset around that, because if we're looking at it as competition, we're going to be fighting it. We're going to be like, no.
Yes.
Right. So I am optimistic that with the proper uptake of AI, it's going to make us better lawyers and happier people. I want you to think a little bit back a few years to like the Industrial Revolution, for example. Oh my gosh, right? We think farmers are going to lose their jobs, right? But yeah, things are different now in the farming world, but we overall have more free time as humans. We try to. If we don't, it's 100% fully self-induced, and I am guilty of doing, not having free time. But we do have more recreation time, right? We have time to read books. We have time to paint. We have time to philosophize. We have time to do conversations like this. And I hope that it's the same thing for the legal industry. I hope that the technology doesn't come so fast that it literally puts people out of jobs, right? I think at the end of the day, and what I pray happens, is that it allows for the evolution of our careers and our jobs in the legal field and in general for everyone. It goes for every industry to really have to be better producers in whatever content that is, right? To have a richer, fuller life when we're not working. And I hope that Tuesdays are the new Fridays. So I would love, people say, oh, Thursdays are the new Fridays, especially after COVID. But I'm like, no. Can we make Tuesdays the new Friday? Right? Because I think we're kind of seeing, we may be getting to the point where AI and technology in general is going to be doing a lot of jobs. We're going to have more free time. And I think with more of this free time, we could be seeing just maybe another renaissance. And I don't know, time will tell. It's going to be really interesting. Can we do this again in 5 years and we'll see how wrong I am?
Yes, we can, but I don't think you are going to be wrong. But I think one of the issues that we might face is some people might end up losing their jobs, which will end up being a big problem, because less job means that more poverty, and then more people sleeping in the street, more kids without food, and more kids without good care, and then more moms without a great job. And that can be a problem. That can also help by more women will start having their own businesses. That also can be the case as well. But I guess, like you said, in 5 years, we need to talk about this again and see what happened exactly.
Here's the thing. Maybe we need to talk about this in 6 months to a year, right? Because a lot's going to happen in 5 years, and a lot's going to happen in a year, and it's maybe something that you can get more of a grasp on, that you can, see in terms of changing and evolution. And I get and appreciate what you're saying about people losing their jobs. Yeah, I mean, it's a balancing act, right? There's both sides here. And I hear a lot of artists complaining about AI because we're seeing some of the, incredible art that platforms like Midjourney are putting out. And, I was like, oh my gosh, if I was an artist, I would be freaking out, right? If I did like traditional hand painting or whatever, because the work it's putting out is just kind of mind blowing to me. And, but then it's like, but is it going to make our jobs a little easier, in a lot of ways? And that's what I really want my lawyer clients to kind of help to grasp onto, that what can we look at with the AI to make our daily workflow a little bit easier, right? Rather than working for 10 hours a day, can we work for 4 hours?
Yeah, I like that idea, to be able to have more free times. I just don't, I think my only concern is not to replacing humans, because what makes us humans is to be able to wake up every day and think for ourselves and do things for ourselves. The little moments that we have with the clients, it means a lot to us. The moment we have with our children means a lot. Let's say AI replace all these moments. So what's the point of having us? Maybe lions will be the next humans. I don't know, because they can make babies and we cannot anymore. So the things that I think that we still need to stay humans and keep the things that make us humans. But I think that we can use AI to make our life a little bit easier, to make the things that doesn't really require our time to be there. But replacing the part that's human touch, make it special, I don't think AI can make that special.
You're right. And I think that that's what professionals are going to really have to kind of grasp onto here, particularly in the legal field, since I'm talking about this and it's my area, is how can we kind of make our client experience even better with the true human touch, right? Because the AI isn't replacing that yet.
I don't think it should. Personally, I don't think it should. Because if it does, then us as human, it's like we don't use our brain anymore. So when we stop using our brain, then kind of make me wonder what will happen. Are we going to become the dumbest thing in the world because we don't use our brain anymore? We don't do anything. We're lazy every single day because something else is doing our work for us. Don't get me wrong. I love AI. I think it's a great idea. I just think that we don't push it too much to replace human, but instead to help us to live a better life, to help us make life a little bit easier. So we, like you said, so we can have the fun that we need to paint our house, because it's fun to paint our house. We can have the fun to do crafting day with our children because it's fun. We can take a road trip to go do something. It's fun because we have an AI that can help us make life a little easier. But also that brings me to what advice would you give to law students and young lawyers looking to succeed into the legal landscape?
Yeah, so I honestly, I could give so much kind of guidance in terms of how to work with clients. And, I think that 80% of your time should be spent loving on your current clients, whatever that is, and the rest of it, client development, because people do the churn and burn with their clients, right? They're like, they get the client, they keep, anyway, I think that that's really key. I think it's a key for for lawyers to, this is going to sound a little, I think it's really important for lawyers, especially women, to stop yearning for A+ work at the expense of shaking hands and kissing babies, right? And what I mean by that is like networking and having, talking to humans, going around and talking to the other people at your firm. I was a young lawyer who was pretty nose to the grindstone. I had to work really hard to produce A+ work. There were other lawyers in the firm who probably did B work and were much better at networking and going around and meeting people, right? So I think it's really important for us to not lose sight of the importance of that, because there's so many of us who are striving for perfect output and it will never be achieved. Turn the damn work in and go talk to some people. Get out of your office. But as for being a young lawyer and coming out of school during this point in time where it is a little kind of there's always uncertainty, but there feels like maybe a little more uncertainty with respect to their legal career. I think that mindset around this is going to be really important, and to really look at your career and just know that, 20 years ago, when I was coming out of law school, those older people, you came out and you didn't have a lot of options in terms of being a lawyer. But now there are a lot of things that you can do with a legal background, and to be very open-minded about what that legal career could look like for you, right? Keeping in mind that, we don't all have to push for big law, right? And $200,000 salaries out of law school. That's not necessarily success, quote unquote, even though we've been told by society that that's what success should look like. So really think about, sit down and do the work and think about what your values are. That's really important, because it means that your decisions that you make going forward are going to align with those values. It's so important. And think about, what does success look like to you, right? Does it look like the corner office in the Ferrari and the trophy wife? Or does it look like sitting on the beach in South Carolina with your craft beer and doing your work from there, right? Everyone kind of has their own definition of success, and we really need to ask ourselves, does my definition of success look like what I've been taught by society and TV, right? So thinking about your definition of success and really outlining what your values are, so that when you're making decisions as you go forward in your career, whether it's legal or you evolve into something totally different, which is cool, making sure that those decisions are always aligned with what your values are. So important.
Yes, and you're right about that. And society kind of make us feel like we need to be this and that, but in reality we don't. We just need to be what we want to be, and I think that's the most important part of our lives. So now, how can someone reach out to you?
Yeah, so the best way to probably get in touch with me is just via email. It's Suzi@legallyblissed.com, and I'm also on LinkedIn. That's where I work. And then I play a little bit on Instagram. So, and that's just my primary account's just my name, Suzi Hixon.
And then also your website?
Yeah. So my website is legallyblissed.com. That's where people can learn more about the Legally Blissed community. And I have a website called Advogence, and that's ADVOGENCE, which is a portmanteau of advocate and artificial intelligence. And because I'm really big on how we can become better advocates through the use of artificial intelligence. And currently that website is directing to my newsletter, which is Power Up Your Law Practice with AI. So if you're interested in powering up your practice with AI, go check that out. And you don't have to be a lawyer. Of course, you don't have to be a lawyer, because there's so many things that, that AI can help us with. And it's not just lawyering. Any kind
Absolutely.
of corporate, anything you're involved in, I think that there's the possibility of utilizing AI in some way to just make your work a little bit easier, to, ultimately, like I said, get rid of those mundane tasks and improve your mental health at the end of the day, which is super important.
Absolutely. And we all need that.
Thank you too, right? It's a balance.
It's a balance, yes. Thank you so much, Suzi. I appreciate you give me the chance to talk to you and to have this conversation. And thank you for being an advocate for AI. And I hope that that's something you will be teaching not just to lawyers, but to other businesses too, because God knows we're going to need that as business owners. We're going to need it.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me. This was so much fun.
Thank you for listening to Female Founders Podcast. That's it for this week's episode. Be sure to follow us on your favorite podcast app or connect with us on womel.com so that you don't miss our next episode. See you next time. Bye for now.